The agonized bellow tore through the Arizona afternoon like a gunshot. Thunder, a rare native Brahman bull, massive and proud even in distress, was sinking deeper into the mud trap with each desperate struggle. His silver-gray coat, now caked with dark mud, heaved with labored breaths. In his eyes, those large, intelligent eyes, shone something beyond animal panic, understanding. As if the mud wasn't horror enough, hundreds of black widow and brown recluse spiders emerged from the desert floor, surrounding the trapped bull in a living, undulating carpet. Their bodies glinted in the harsh sunlight, 8 legs moving in eerie synchronization as they converged. "Harold, look!" Grace Mitchell's weathered hand gripped her husband's arm, her voice breaking. The elderly hikers stood frozen on the ridge above. The bull's eyes met theirs, a silent plea that transcended species. Then his head lowered, strength failing, as the spiders drew closer. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The Sonoran Desert of Arizona held many secrets beneath its harsh exterior. What appeared barren to untrained eyes was actually a delicate ecosystem, home to creatures that had adapted over millennia to survive in one of America's most unforgiving landscapes. Among these creatures, few were as majestic or as rare as the native Brahman bulls, particularly Thunder. Standing over 6 feet at the shoulder with a distinctive silver-gray coat and a prominent muscular hump, Thunder was the living embodiment of a vanishing bloodline. Local ranchers spoke of him with reverence. Wildlife biologists tracked his movements with scientific interest. At 7 years old, he represented one of the last purebred specimens of his kind, carrying genetic material that traced back to the original Brahman cattle introduced to the American Southwest. Thunder's territory spanned the remote stretches of the eastern Arizona borderlands, where scattered mesquite and palo verde trees provided meager shade from the relentless sun. He had survived 3 major droughts, countless predator encounters, and even a wildfire that had swept through his range 2 summers prior. The rangers at Coyote Basin Station knew him well, his distinctive track pattern, his preference for certain watering holes, and his unusual intelligence. Thunder seemed to possess an awareness that separated him from other wild cattle. Those same rangers now raced toward his location. Robert Miller gripped the steering wheel of the dusty government Jeep, his weathered face set with determination. At 65, he had spent more years protecting wildlife than some of his team members had been alive. Behind him in the vehicle sat Scott Harrison, the 45-year-old bovine specialist whose family had ranched this land for generations before he'd chosen conservation over cattle raising. Lisa Thompson rode shotgun, the invertebrate expert already reviewing data on her tablet about the spider species reported at the scene. At 38, she'd published groundbreaking research on desert arachnids and their ecological importance. James Wilson, the 53-year-old former military man who handled all their equipment and logistics, was checking rescue gear in the back, methodically ensuring everything was ready. The youngest member of their team, 27-year-old Olivia Baker, sat quietly, studying maps of the area. Fresh out of graduate school with specializations in animal cognition and interspecies relationships, she was still proving herself to the veteran team. Her theories about animal intelligence often raised skeptical eyebrows, but Robert had seen enough promise in her work to bring her on board. 5 minutes out," Robert announced, dust billowing behind their vehicle as they followed the coordinates provided by the elderly hikers who had called in the emergency. "The Mitchells are reliable witnesses," Scott noted. "Harold was a vet for 40 years. If he says Thunder's in trouble, I believe him." None of them knew yet that this rescue would be unlike any other they had attempted, or that their actions today would ripple far beyond saving one animal, no matter how precious that animal might be to the delicate balance of desert life. The ranger's vehicle skidded to a halt in a cloud of ochre dust about 50 yards from the scene. Robert was first out, binoculars already raised to his eyes. The years had slowed his sprint, but not his reactions. "Sweet Lord," he muttered, the gravity of the situation immediately apparent. Through his lenses he could see Thunder, magnificent even in distress, chest deep in a mud pit that had no business being there in this part of the desert. The bull's powerful shoulders strained with each attempt to free himself, but Robert could see he was only sinking deeper. Most disturbing was the writhing carpet of spiders surrounding the pit, hundreds of them moving in patterns that seemed almost coordinated. Grace and Harold Mitchell approached from where they'd been waiting in the shade of a stunted mesquite tree. Harold's face was etched with concern, his arm protectively around his wife's shoulders. "We heard him before we saw him," Harold explained, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd spent decades working with animals. "That wasn't just any distress call. I've never heard a bovine make that sound in 40 years of veterinary practice." Grace nodded, her silver hair catching the late afternoon light. "He looked right at us, Robert. I swear he knew we were going for help." Robert introduced his team quickly as they unloaded equipment. The Mitchells' eyes widened slightly at the impressive array of rescue gear, specialized harnesses, portable winches, and medical supplies designed for large animals. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" Scott asked, kneeling to examine the edge of the mud pit through his field glasses. "This formation doesn't look natural for this terrain." "Never," Harold confirmed. "And I've hiked these trails for 20 years since retiring." Lisa had already set up a portable workstation, spreading out reference materials on the region's arachnids. "We've got black widows and brown recluse in significant numbers," she reported, her tone clinical, but her expression troubled. "Both protected species in this preserve due to population decline. So we're looking at saving an endangered bull without harming endangered spiders," James summarized grimly, already laying out ropes and harnesses. "Just another Tuesday at the office." Thunder let out another bellow, weaker than before, drawing everyone's attention back to the urgent situation. "We need to establish a perimeter," Robert decided. "James, start setting up the rescue equipment. Scott, assess Thunder's condition from a safe distance. Lisa, I need options for managing those spiders without harming them." Olivia had been silently observing the scene, her notebook already filled with observations. "The spider's behavior is unusual," she ventured. "They're maintaining a consistent distance from the bull, not advancing or retreating." Robert glanced at her, then back at the scene. "What's your assessment?" "I'm not sure yet," she admitted, "but I don't think they're acting aggressively toward Thunder. There's something else going on." Scott snorted softly. "With all due respect to our newest team member, I'm more concerned about getting several tons of rare bull out of that mud before he suffocates than speculating about spider psychology." Robert held up a hand. "Every observation matters, Scott. Olivia, keep watching the spiders. Scott, tell me what you see with Thunder." Scott raised his specialized binoculars. "He's exhausted, but still fighting. From the mud line, I'd estimate he's been struggling for at least 3 to 4 hours. Respiratory rate is elevated. Mucous membranes appear tacky from here. He's dehydrated. If we don't get him out in the next couple hours, we risk losing him to exhaustion and shock." The team fell into their practiced rhythm, setting up equipment with the efficiency that comes from years of working together in crisis situations. Olivia continued her observations, moving carefully around the perimeter, studying the spider's movements. "What about tranquilizing Thunder?" James suggested as he anchored a heavy-duty winch to their vehicle. "Make it easier to pull him out if he's not fighting us." Scott shook his head. "Too risky in his compromised state. The sedation could drop his blood pressure enough to kill him. We need him conscious and helping us if possible." "I agree," Harold added. "In mud rescues, you want the animal's cooperation." A tense debate broke out about the best approach. Scott argued for a direct rescue, creating a path through the spiders with protective gear. Lisa countered that disturbing hundreds of venomous spiders could create a dangerous situation for both the team and the spiders themselves. These aren't just any spiders, she insisted. They're keystone species for this ecosystem. Their venom is being studied for medical applications. We can't just sweep them aside. And Thunder isn't just any bull, Scott retorted. He's one of the last of his bloodline. The genetic diversity he represents is irreplaceable. As the argument intensified, Olivia moved closer to the edge of the mud pit, her attention caught by something in the spider's movement pattern. She knelt down, ignoring the heated discussion behind her. Thunder's eyes found hers across the distance. There was such intelligence in that gaze, such awareness. He let out a softer sound, almost a rumble, as if acknowledging her presence. "I see you," she whispered. "We're going to help you." The bull's ear flicked, and in that moment Olivia felt a connection that transcended the typical human-animal dynamic. This wasn't just a trapped animal. This was a being experiencing fear, hope, and understanding. Robert approached quietly, kneeling beside her. "What are you seeing, Olivia?" "The spiders aren't random, Robert. Look at their distribution pattern." She pointed carefully. "They're maintaining almost perfect spacing from each other, and they've created what amounts to a perimeter around Thunder." Robert studied the scene with new eyes. Decades of experience had taught him to trust unusual observations, even when they challenged conventional wisdom. "You think they're protecting him?" The skepticism in his voice was tempered with curiosity. "I don't know yet," Olivia admitted. "But I do know this isn't typical predatory behavior for either species. And look at Thunder. He's not reacting to the spiders with the fear you'd expect." Something else is happening here. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert landscape. Time was running out. Thunder's breathing had become more labored, his attempts to free himself more sporadic as exhaustion took its toll. "We need a plan now," Robert announced, gathering the team. "I'm open to all suggestions, but we move in 15 minutes, ready or not. That bull won't last the night in that mud." The debate resumed with new urgency, theories and counter-theories flying as rapidly as the desert wind. Through it all, Thunder watched them with those knowing eyes, waiting to see if these humans would understand in time what he already seemed to know. That something far more complex than a simple accident had brought them all together in this remote stretch of Arizona wilderness. "Everyone, stop and look at this!" Olivia's voice cut through the heated debate, quiet but commanding. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her binoculars pointed not at Thunder or the spiders, but at a dense patch of mesquite about 70 yards east of their position. Robert joined her first, followed by the others. "What am I looking for?" "The shadow beneath the third tree from the left." It moved. Robert adjusted his focus, scanning the area carefully. Then he saw it. A tawny shape, nearly invisible against the sun-baked earth, its spotted coat providing perfect camouflage. Only the occasional twitch of a tail tip betrayed its presence. "Mountain lion," he confirmed softly. "Good-sized one, too." "That explains the spiders," Olivia said, excitement bleeding into her professional tone. "They're not threatening Thunder. They're forming a defensive perimeter around him." Lisa moved closer, her skepticism evident. "That's not possible." "Spiders don't protect large mammals." "Not typically, no," Olivia acknowledged. "But remember Dr. Hernandez's research from the University of Arizona? He documented cases of black widows responding to stress pheromones from larger animals. They don't care about the animals themselves. They're protecting their future food source." "From other predators," Scott finished, understanding dawning. "The mountain lion." "Exactly," Olivia nodded. "The spiders detect the pheromones Thunder is releasing in his distress. They know the mountain lion is waiting for an easy meal. By forming this perimeter, they're essentially claiming him first." "Staking their claim before the big cat can," James mused. "Nature's version of calling dibs." Lisa's scientific skepticism warred with the evidence before her eyes. It's theoretically possible. There have been documented cases of interspecies protective behaviors when resources are at stake. So the spiders aren't our enemies here. They're actually helping keep thunder alive by deterring the mountain lion, Robert summarized. Harold Mitchell stepped forward. In 40 years of veterinary practice, I've seen some unusual animal behaviors, but this, he shook his head in wonder. If Olivia's right, Scott said, we need to rethink our approach entirely. Thunder let out another bellow, weaker than before. His massive head drooped lower, the strength visibly ebbing from his powerful frame. Regardless of why the spiders are there, we're running out of time, Robert reminded them. How does this change our rescue plan? Olivia's mind raced. If the spiders are responding to Thunder's stress pheromones, we might be able to redirect them using synthetic versions or similar chemical compounds. We don't carry synthetic pheromones in our field kit, Lisa pointed out. No, but we have something that might work, Olivia countered. She hurried to her pack and retrieved a small bottle. This is an experimental compound I've been testing for my research. It mimics mammalian stress signals. Scott looked dubious. You want to test an experimental compound in the middle of a life-or-death rescue? Do you have a better idea? Olivia challenged. Thunder has minutes, not hours. Robert considered their options, his weathered face grave. 40 years of wildlife rescue had taught him that sometimes unconventional approaches were necessary when traditional methods wouldn't work. What exactly are you proposing? He asked Olivia. We create a chemical trail leading away from Thunder toward the area opposite the mountain lion. The spiders should follow it, giving us a clear path to approach him. Meanwhile, James and Scott can set up a deterrent near the mountain lion to keep it from approaching. And if it doesn't work, Scott pressed. Then we're no worse off than we are now, Olivia replied. But every minute we debate, Thunder sinks deeper. Robert made his decision. We'll try it. Lisa, work with Olivia on the spider diversion. Scott and James, prepare the extraction equipment and set up something to keep that mountain lion at bay. I want everyone in protective gear. Just because these spiders might be helping Thunder doesn't mean they won't bite us. The team dispersed with renewed purpose. Olivia and Lisa carefully prepared the compound, diluting it to create a trail leading away from the mud pit. Scott and James assembled the rescue harness and winch system while setting up portable lights and sound deterrents to discourage the mountain lion from approaching. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert floor, they implemented their plan. Olivia, wearing thick protective clothing, carefully laid down the chemical trail. The response was immediate and dramatic. Spiders began to follow the scent, creating an opening in their perimeter. It's working, Lisa whispered in amazement. With the path cleared, Scott and Robert approached Thunder cautiously. The bull's eyes, dulled with exhaustion, brightened slightly at their approach. He made no attempt to struggle as they prepared the specialized harness, seemingly understanding that help had arrived. Easy, big fella, Scott murmured. We're going to get you out of this. Thunder responded with a soft rumble, his massive head nudging against Scott's protected arm in a gesture that seemed almost like gratitude. The extraction process was painstaking and tense. The mud had a powerful suction effect, making each inch of progress a battle. James operated the winch with precision, careful not to apply too much force too quickly, which could injure Thunder's already strained muscles and joints. As they worked, Olivia maintained the chemical diversion, keeping the spiders at bay. Lisa monitored the mountain lion, which had become more active as dusk approached, occasionally testing the deterrents but so far keeping its distance. The consistency of this mud is strange, Scott remarked as they worked. It's almost like quicksand, but we don't get natural quicksand formations in this part of Arizona. Robert frowned, filing away the observation for later consideration. For now, all that mattered was saving Thunder. After nearly an hour of careful extraction, they finally freed Thunder's hind legs from the mud's grip. The bull seemed to understand he was close to freedom and summoned his remaining strength to help, pushing with his powerful legs as the team guided him toward solid ground. With one final heave, Thunder pulled free of the mud pit, staggering slightly before finding his footing on firm earth. Despite his exhaustion, he stood tall, his massive frame silhouetted against the setting sun. Mud-caked and weary, he still emanated a dignity that left the rescue team in awe. What happened next astonished even Olivia, who had devoted her career to studying animal intelligence. Thunder turned to each team member in turn, making direct eye contact, before lowering his head in what could only be described as a gesture of gratitude. When he came to Olivia, he held her gaze longest, then gently pressed his mud-caked forehead against her protected shoulder. "He's thanking us," Grace Mitchell whispered, tears in her eyes. "That's anthropomorphizing," Lisa began automatically, then stopped herself as she watched the interaction. Or maybe not. There's still so much we don't understand about animal cognition. As the light faded from the sky, the spiders began to disperse, their unusual behavior pattern dissolving now that Thunder was no longer trapped and the mountain lion had retreated deeper into the brush. Scott performed a quick field assessment of Thunder's condition. "He's dehydrated and exhausted, but I don't see any life-threatening injuries. The mud actually protected him from serious abrasions. We should get him to the rehabilitation facility for observation," Robert decided. "He's too weak to release immediately." As they prepared to transport Thunder, Olivia returned to the mud pit, her scientific curiosity piqued by Scott's earlier observation about its unusual consistency. "Robert," she called, her voice tight with concern. "You need to see this." The team gathered around the edge of the pit. In the beam of their flashlights, something metallic glinted beneath the surface of the mud. "What is that?" James asked, kneeling for a closer look. Robert's expression darkened as he recognized what they were seeing. "That's a snare cable. This wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately created this trap." A stunned silence fell over the group as the implications sank in. "Who would do this?" Grace asked, horrified. "And why?" "Someone who knows exactly what Thunder is worth," Scott replied grimly. "A bull with his genetic profile would fetch a fortune on the black market, alive or dead." Thunder, sensing the change in mood, moved closer to Olivia, as if seeking reassurance. She placed a gentle hand on his mud-caked flank. "This changes everything," Robert said quietly. "This isn't just a rescue anymore. It's a crime scene." As darkness settled fully over the desert, the team realized their day was far from over. They had saved Thunder from the mud, but the discovery of the trap opened up questions none of them had anticipated. Who had set it? How many other traps might be hidden across the preserve? And most disturbingly, was someone watching them even now? The moon rose over the Arizona desert, casting silver light across the landscape as the rangers established a secure perimeter around the trap site. Robert had called in the discovery to headquarters, and they were now under instructions to preserve all evidence until a specialized forensics team could arrive in the morning. Thunder had been moved to a makeshift examination area where Scott and Harold Mitchell worked together to assess his condition. Despite his ordeal, the bull remained remarkably calm, allowing them to clean his wounds and administer fluids without resistance. "His vital signs are stabilizing," Scott reported, listening through his stethoscope. "Remarkable resilience for an animal who spent hours fighting quicksand." Harold nodded in agreement. "I've treated cattle my entire career, but I've never seen one with this level of awareness." "Watch his eyes. He's tracking everything we do." Nearby, James and Lisa had set up powerful lights around the mud pit and were carefully documenting the trap's construction. They worked methodically, photographing every component that became visible as the mud slowly settled. "This is military-grade equipment," James muttered, examining a cable tensioner partially exposed in the mud. "Not something your average poacher would have access to." Lisa looked troubled as she collected samples of the mud itself. "The composition has been artificially altered. There are chemical additives that increase the suction effect, makes it nearly impossible for an animal to escape once trapped." Olivia sat a short distance away with Thunder, her hand resting gently on his massive shoulder. The bull had developed a clear preference for her presence, turning to watch whenever she moved away and visibly relaxing when she returned. She'd been quietly observing him, making notes in her field journal by flashlight. "How's our patient?" Robert asked, approaching them after setting up the secure perimeter. "Physically improving," Olivia replied. "But there's something else happening with him." She hesitated, aware that her observations might sound fanciful to her more experienced colleagues. "He keeps looking back toward the eastern ridge, not randomly, with purpose. It's the third time he's done it in the past hour." Robert had learned over his long career to trust instincts, both animal and human. "Show me." Thunder's ears pricked forward as Olivia pointed toward the rocky outcropping about half a mile east of their position. The bull's gaze was fixed, unwavering. "Could be nothing," Robert acknowledged. "Could be he's sensing another animal, or someone could be watching us," Olivia finished quietly. Robert's expression hardened. "I'll have James set up the thermal imaging equipment. If someone's out there, we'll find them." As Robert walked away, Thunder made a low, rumbling sound, nudging Olivia's arm with his massive head. "What is it, big guy?" she asked softly. "What are you trying to tell me?" The bull's intelligent eyes met hers, and Olivia felt again that uncanny sense of communication. She'd studied animal cognition extensively, but the connection she felt with Thunder went beyond academic understanding. There was something deeply personal in the way he responded to her. Her thoughts were interrupted when Scott approached, medical kit in hand. "I need to clean his facial lacerations," he explained. "Would you mind staying with him? He seems calmer when you're close." Olivia nodded, holding Thunder's head gently while Scott worked. As the veterinarian carefully treated a deep cut above the bull's eye, Olivia noticed something unusual. "Scott, look at this pattern of cuts. They're not random like you'd expect from struggling in mud." Scott paused, examining the marks more carefully. "You're right. These are too uniform, almost like someone deliberately marked him," Olivia finished. "Some kind of identification system?" They exchanged troubled glances as the implications sank in. If Thunder had been deliberately marked, it meant he had been specifically targeted, not randomly trapped. Across the site, Grace Mitchell was speaking with Lisa, sharing her observations from years of hiking in the area. "This section of the preserve isn't on any public trails," Grace explained, tracing a line on the map Lisa had spread out. "Harold and I only found it because we were tracking a particularly beautiful Palo Verde tree we spotted from the ridge. So it's isolated, rarely visited," Lisa mused. "Perfect place to set up an illegal operation." "That's what bothers me," Grace replied. "In 20 years of hiking here, we've never seen anything like this. It's as if someone knew exactly where Thunder would be." Meanwhile, James had set up the thermal imaging equipment and was scanning the eastern ridge. Robert stood beside him, binoculars raised. "Anything?" he asked. James adjusted the settings on the device. "Not yet. Wait, got something." He focused the equipment more precisely. Small heat signature about 300 yards up. Could be human, could be an animal. Robert studied the area through his night vision binoculars. Movement, definitely not a desert animal. Too deliberate. "Should we investigate?" James asked. Robert considered their options. "Not yet. If someone is watching, I don't want to alert them that we've spotted them. Let's keep monitoring while we work." As the night deepened, the team continued their documentation and care for Thunder. Harold and Grace eventually departed after Robert assured them their witness statements could be formalized in the morning. The elderly couple left reluctantly, clearly concerned about the bull they had helped save. "Call us if anything changes," Harold insisted. "I've grown rather fond of that magnificent animal." With the Mitchells gone, the ranger team settled into their roles for the long night ahead. Scott and Lisa continued their scientific documentation while James maintained security around the perimeter. Robert coordinated with headquarters, arranging for the forensics team's arrival at first light. Olivia remained with Thunder, who had finally settled enough to eat some hay and drink water from a portable trough. As she observed him, she began to piece together a theory about what might have happened. "Robert?" she called softly. "I think I understand part of this." The senior ranger joined her, his weathered face showing the fatigue of the long day, but his eyes still alert. "Thunder wasn't just randomly passing through," she explained. "This is part of his regular territory. Look at these worn paths. He follows specific routes between water sources." "Someone studied his patterns," Robert nodded, following her reasoning. "Exactly. The trap was placed precisely in his path, where he would be most vulnerable after the recent rains." "But why go to such elaborate lengths?" Robert wondered. "Even a rare bull like Thunder wouldn't command enough money on the black market to justify this kind of operation." Olivia hesitated. "Unless he's not the only target. What if this is a test run for something bigger?" Robert's expression darkened. "A poaching operation with military-grade equipment, targeting specific animals, could be connected to the exotic animal trade," Olivia suggested. "Pure bloodline specimens fetch astronomical prices in certain markets." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft alert from James's thermal imaging equipment. "Movement again," he reported quietly. "Definitely human. 2 individuals moving west away from our position." "They know we've discovered the trap," Robert concluded. "They're retreating." "Should we pursue?" Scott asked, joining them. Robert shook his head. "Not without backup and proper authorization. Our priority is securing this scene and protecting Thunder. We'll alert the county sheriff and have them send deputies to monitor the access roads." As they discussed next steps, Thunder suddenly raised his head, ears swiveling toward the darkness beyond their lights. A low, warning rumble emanated from his chest. "He senses something," Olivia whispered. The rangers fell silent, scanning the darkness. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, at the very edge of their light's reach, a shadow shifted, too large to be a coyote, too low to the ground to be human. "The mountain lion's back," Lisa identified, reaching slowly for her deterrent spray. "It must be hungry to approach with all of us here," Scott observed. Thunder's posture changed, his massive frame tensing despite his exhaustion. He positioned himself between the approaching predator and Olivia in what appeared to be a protective stance. "Remarkable," James murmured. "He's defending us." "Or himself," Lisa countered. "Ever the scientist." "Either way, we need to deter that cat," Robert decided. "James, the sound cannon." James activated the device, which emitted a focused blast of sound toward the mountain lion's position. The shadow retreated immediately, melting back into the darkness. Thunder remained vigilant for several minutes before gradually relaxing. He turned to Olivia, nudging her gently as if checking that she was unharmed. "Thank you," she told him softly, stroking his broad forehead. The night continued with periodic security checks and monitoring of Thunder's condition. As midnight approached, Scott made a discovery that changed their understanding of the situation. "Robert, look at this," he called, holding up a small object he'd extracted from the mud. "It's an electronic transmitter." Robert examined it carefully. Remote monitoring capability. Someone was tracking exactly when this trap was sprung. "There's more," Lisa added, holding up a sample container. "I've identified a synthetic compound in the mud. It's designed to attract bovines, like a chemical lure. The pieces were falling into place, painting a disturbing picture of a sophisticated operation, not opportunistic poaching, but a calculated effort targeting specific animals. As the team processed these discoveries, Olivia sat quietly with Thunder, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and lay resting on a bed of clean straw they'd provided. Despite his ordeal, there was still a dignity in his posture, a nobility that transcended his current bedraggled state. She thought about the complex chain of events that had brought them all together, the bull, the spiders, the rangers, the elderly hikers, each playing their part in a drama that was still unfolding. What struck her most was Thunder's apparent awareness throughout. Not just animal instinct, but something deeper. An understanding that seemed to challenge conventional boundaries between human and animal consciousness. As she watched him sleep, Olivia wondered what other secrets this magnificent creature might hold, and what morning would reveal about those who had tried to capture him. One thing was certain. Thunder's story was far from over, and the dawn would bring new challenges for them all. Dawn broke over the Arizona desert in a spectacular display of crimson and gold. The rangers, bleary-eyed from their overnight vigil, welcomed the forensics team that arrived in a convoy of dust-covered vehicles. Thunder had slept fitfully through the night, waking occasionally to ensure Olivia remained nearby. His condition had stabilized, though exhaustion still marked his powerful frame. Robert briefed the lead forensic investigator, a stern-faced woman named Diana Blackwood, who specialized in wildlife crimes. The trap was sophisticated, military-grade components with remote monitoring capabilities. Someone invested serious resources into capturing this bull. Diana surveyed the scene with practiced eyes. This matches the profile of 3 other incidents we've investigated across the Southwest. Same technical signatures, same precision placement. She lowered her voice. We believe it's the work of the Viper Syndicate. Robert's expression darkened. I thought that was just a rumor. Unfortunately, not. They're an international wildlife trafficking ring specializing in genetically valuable specimens. They've been operating along the border regions for about 18 months. FBI's been tracking them, but they're elusive, professional, well-funded, with connections to former military personnel. As the forensics team began their methodical examination of the trap site, Scott approached with the morning's assessment of Thunder. His vitals are good, considering what he's been through. The real miracle is his mental state. Most animals would be traumatized, but he's remarkably calm. I've never seen anything like it. Olivia had remained close to Thunder throughout the night. The bond between them had deepened with each passing hour. While the others had expressed amazement at the bull's behavior, Olivia saw it as confirmation of theories she'd explored during her graduate studies. That certain animals possessed levels of consciousness and emotional intelligence far beyond what conventional science acknowledged. We need to move him to a secure facility, Robert decided after consulting with Diana. If the Viper Syndicate targeted him once, they'll try again. The University Research Ranch has high security, Scott suggested, and they have the veterinary facilities to give him proper care while he recovers. Thunder, as if understanding the conversation about his fate, rose to his feet. Despite his ordeal, he stood tall, his massive silver-gray form impressive, even covered in dried mud. He approached Robert and Scott, stopping a respectful distance away, his intelligent eyes moving between them. It's almost like he's listening to us, Scott remarked, unable to keep the wonder from his voice. He is, Olivia said simply, joining them, and he doesn't want to be confined. Robert gave her a questioning look. You can't know that. I've been observing his responses to our conversations all night, she explained. His ear movements, pupil dilation, body language, they all show specific reactions to certain words and phrases. When you mentioned moving him to a facility, his stress indicators increased immediately. That could be coincidence, Scott argued, though his tone lacked conviction. Thunder made a low rumbling sound, turning his massive head toward the open desert, then back to Olivia. He wants to remain free, she insisted, and I think we need to consider that option. The best protection might be returning him to his territory with monitoring. Before Robert could respond, Lisa called urgently from the trap site. "You need to see this." The team hurried over to where Lisa and Diana were examining something in the mud. Diana held up a small object in a clear evidence bag, a microchip, partially encased in mud. "It's a tracking device," Diana explained, "but not one of ours. This doesn't match any conservation program tags used in the Southwest." "Someone was tracking Thunder before the trap was set," Lisa concluded. "The question is, when and how did they tag him?" This revelation sent a ripple of concern through the group. If Thunder had been previously tagged without the knowledge of conservation authorities, it suggested the Viper Syndicate's operation was more extensive and had been in place longer than they'd realized. "We need to scan him completely," Scott decided. "Check for any other devices." As if on cue, James approached with portable scanning equipment. "Already ahead of you." Thunder allowed the scan with remarkable patience, standing still as James moved the device methodically across his body. Near the bull's right shoulder, the scanner emitted a high-pitched beep. "Got something," James reported, focusing the scanner more precisely. "It's small, subcutaneous, professional implantation. You'd never find it without knowing where to look." Scott carefully parted Thunder's thick silver coat, examining the area. "There's a tiny scar here, fully healed. This was done months ago, maybe longer." The implications were disturbing. Someone had tagged Thunder long before setting the trap, tracking his movements, studying his patterns, waiting for the perfect opportunity. "This changes our security calculations," Robert said gravely. "If they've been monitoring him remotely, they know we've rescued him. They may already be planning their next move." As if confirming Robert's concerns, the radio crackled with an urgent message from headquarters. 2 rangers patrolling the northern boundary of the preserve had discovered another trap, identical in design but not yet activated. "They're not just after Thunder," Robert realized. "This is a systematic operation targeting multiple animals." Diana nodded grimly. "That fits the Viper Syndicate's profile. They typically run concurrent operations to maximize their chances of success." Thunder became increasingly restless as the morning progressed, his attention repeatedly drawn to the eastern horizon. Olivia noticed his behavior and approached Robert with her concerns. "He's trying to tell us something," she insisted. "He keeps looking east toward those rock formations." Robert had learned to trust Olivia's observations, however unorthodox they might seem. "What do you think it means?" "I'm not sure," she admitted. "But I think it's important. Animals often have awareness of things we don't perceive." After a brief discussion, Robert decided to send a small reconnaissance team to investigate the eastern rock formations. James would lead, accompanied by Lisa and 2 members of the forensics team. While they prepared for their mission, Scott continued his examination of Thunder, administering fluids and antibiotics as a precaution against infection from his time in the mud. "His recovery is remarkable," Scott told Olivia as they worked together. "Most animals would be showing signs of severe stress after such an ordeal." "He's not most animals," Olivia replied, stroking Thunder's massive neck. The bull leaned slightly into her touch, his eyes half closing in what appeared to be contentment. Scott watched their interaction with growing fascination. "You know, when you first joined the team with all your theories about advanced animal cognition, I thought you were just another academic with more book learning than field experience." He smiled ruefully. "I'm man enough to admit when I'm wrong." Olivia appreciated the acknowledgement but kept her focus on Thunder. There's so much we don't understand about animal consciousness. Western science has been slow to recognize what many indigenous cultures have known for centuries, that the line between human and animal awareness is far more blurred than we've acknowledged. Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by an urgent call from James's reconnaissance team. They had discovered something significant in the eastern rock formations, a hidden observation post equipped with high-powered optics and communications equipment. "It's recently abandoned," James reported over the radio. "Coffee's still warm in the thermos. They left in a hurry, probably when they realized we'd found Thunder in the trap." "Any identification?" Robert asked. "Nothing obvious, but the equipment is high-end. Military or law enforcement grade. Diana says it matches known Viper Syndicate setups." This discovery elevated the situation from a wildlife crime to a major security concern. Robert immediately contacted regional authorities to coordinate a broader response, while Diana called in her FBI liaison. As the morning progressed, the camp transformed into a hub of activity. Additional rangers arrived to secure a wider perimeter, while FBI agents established communications equipment to monitor for any suspicious activity in the region. Throughout the escalating response, Thunder remained a calm presence at the center of the storm. Despite offers of a transport to a secure facility, Robert had decided to keep the bull on site until they better understood the extent of the threat, a decision influenced by Olivia's insistence that Thunder's well-being depended on his freedom. By midday, the temperature had risen to a punishing 102 degrees. The team erected shade structures and misting systems to keep Thunder comfortable. The bull drank deeply from the fresh water provided, but refused to eat the high-quality hay Scott offered. "He's looking for something specific," Olivia observed after Thunder rejected the third variety of feed. Following his gaze, she noticed a particular desert shrub at the edge of their camp. "I think he wants that." Scott looked skeptical. "That's creosote bush. Cattle don't typically eat it." Nevertheless, Olivia collected some of the pungent leaves and offered them to Thunder. To everyone's surprise, he consumed them eagerly. "Interesting," Scott mused, making notes. "Self-medication, perhaps. Creosote has natural antibiotic properties." As Thunder ate, a helicopter appeared on the horizon, bearing FBI markings. It landed at a designated spot a safe distance from the camp, stirring up a cloud of dust that momentarily obscured the arrival of its passengers. When the dust settled, a tall, distinguished man in his 40s approached, flanked by two agents. Diana greeted him with clear respect. "Special Agent Michael Townsend," she introduced him to Robert. "He leads the FBI's Viper Syndicate Task Force." Townsend shook Robert's hand firmly. "Thank you for your quick response. The evidence you've secured may be the break we've been waiting for." The FBI agent was immediately drawn to Thunder, approaching the bull with a mixture of caution and admiration. "So this is the specimen they were after." "His name is Thunder," Olivia corrected gently, still positioned protectively near the bull. Townsend studied both Olivia and Thunder with interest. "Ms. Baker, right? I read your thesis on interspecies communication during my preparation for this operation. Fascinating work." Olivia looked surprised that an FBI agent would be familiar with her academic research. "We need to understand our adversaries," Townsend explained. "The Viper Syndicate doesn't just traffic in animals, they exploit specific genetic traits. Your research on animal intelligence intersects with their targeting patterns. This revelation cast the situation in an even more disturbing light. If the syndicate was specifically targeting animals with higher cognitive abilities, it suggested purposes beyond simple trafficking. As Townsend briefed the team on the broader investigation, Thunder suddenly tensed, his attention riveted to the southern perimeter. A low, warning rumble emanated from his chest. Everyone fell silent, following the bull's gaze. For several tense moments, nothing seemed amiss. Then, through binoculars, Robert spotted movement. A drone, nearly invisible against the bright sky, hovering at the edge of their operational area. "Down!" Townsend ordered sharply. The team took cover as FBI agents deployed a counter-drone system. The drone retreated quickly, but the message was clear. They were under surveillance. The Viper Syndicate was still watching, still planning. "They're not giving up," Townsend said grimly as they regrouped. "That drone was gathering intelligence, assessing our numbers, equipment, Thunder's condition." "What are they planning?" Robert asked. "Based on previous operations, they'll likely attempt a direct extraction. Small team, precision strike, minimal engagement. Their objective will be to tranquilize Thunder and transport him via helicopter to a prearranged location, probably across the border." The team looked at Thunder, who had remained remarkably calm throughout the drone incident. His intelligent eyes seemed to evaluate each person speaking, his ears flicking to follow the conversation. "We need to move him to a secure facility immediately," Townsend decided. "With all due respect," Olivia interjected, "I don't think that's the right approach." All eyes turned to her. Thunder has survived in this territory for years. He knows every hiding place, every escape route. Removing him from his environment puts him at a disadvantage, and us as well. I think our best strategy is to use his knowledge of the terrain." "You're suggesting we use the bull as bait?" Townsend asked, his tone neutral. "I'm suggesting we trust him," Olivia clarified. "Let him move freely within a monitored perimeter. He's already demonstrated awareness of threats. He spotted the drone before any of our lookouts did. If we follow his lead, we might be able to anticipate the Syndicate's next move." A heated debate ensued, with opinions divided on Olivia's unorthodox proposal. Throughout the discussion, Thunder remained focused on Olivia, his posture conveying what seemed remarkably like support for her position. Finally, after consulting privately with his team, Townsend made his decision. "We'll try Ms. Baker's approach, with modifications. Thunder will be allowed controlled movement within a secure perimeter. We'll monitor him with our most advanced tracking technology, and we'll have rapid response teams positioned at strategic points." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across the desert landscape, the team implemented the new strategy. Thunder was fitted with a lightweight, non-invasive tracking collar, which he accepted with surprising cooperation, and allowed to move within a designated area of his natural territory. Olivia stayed close, observing his behavior, ready to interpret his responses to potential threats. As night approached once more, the team prepared for what they all sensed would be the decisive confrontation with the Viper Syndicate. Thunder stood on a small rise, his powerful silhouette outlined against the setting sun. Despite his ordeal, there was majesty in his bearing, a reminder of why such magnificent creatures inspired both awe and, unfortunately, greed in humans. Whatever the night might bring, one thing was certain. The battle to protect Thunder had become a test of humanity's capacity to recognize and respect the inherent value of wildlife beyond its utility or price tag. Night descended upon the Arizona desert, transforming the landscape into a realm of deep shadows and silver light. The nearly full moon cast enough illumination for the surveillance teams positioned strategically around the perimeter to maintain visual contact with Thunder. The bull had settled in a small clearing surrounded by mesquite trees, seemingly at ease despite the tension pervading the human encampment nearby. Olivia sat on a rocky outcropping within sight of Thunder, night vision binoculars hanging around her neck. She had refused to return to the base camp despite Robert's concerns about her safety. "He trusts me," she had insisted. "If something happens, he'll alert me before any of our technology detects it." Robert had reluctantly agreed, but insisted on James maintaining position about 50 yards behind her, hidden among the rocks with a tranquilizer rifle, not for Thunder, but for any predators that might approach during the night. In the command tent, Special Agent Townsend coordinated with his team, monitoring thermal imaging feeds from drones silently patrolling the airspace above. Diana Blackwood and Scott huddled over maps of the territory, identifying possible approach routes the Viper Syndicate might use. Their most likely insertion point would be from the south. Diana pointed to a narrow canyon. There's a dry wash that provides cover all the way to within half a mile of Thunder's position. Scott nodded in agreement. That's consistent with Thunder's behavior earlier. He kept looking in that direction and showing signs of agitation. Townsend considered this information. We'll concentrate additional sensors in that area, but maintain coverage on all approaches. These people are professionals. They'll anticipate our most obvious defensive positions. Outside the tent, Lisa approached with a tablet displaying her analysis of the spider's behavior from the previous day. I've been reviewing our footage, and there's something remarkable about how they responded to the mountain lion's presence. The synchronized movement pattern defies normal arachnid behavior. What's your point? Townsend asked, his attention divided between her report and the surveillance feeds. If we understand what triggered that unusual protective response, we might have another early warning system at our disposal, Lisa explained. The spiders detected the threat before we did. This caught Townsend's full attention. Are you suggesting we use the spiders as some kind of biological alarm system? Not exactly, Lisa clarified. But understanding the environmental cues they responded to might help us enhance our own detection capabilities. While this discussion continued at the command center, Olivia maintained her quiet vigil near Thunder. The bull had dozed off but remained alert, his ears occasionally twitching at distant sounds inaudible to human ears. Olivia found herself reflecting on the events that had brought them to this moment, the complex chain of circumstances that had connected their lives. Thunder suddenly raised his head, eyes focused intently on the southern perimeter. Olivia followed his gaze, but could see nothing unusual in the moonlit landscape. Nevertheless, she trusted his senses and keyed her radio. "Movement to the south," she whispered. "Thunder's detected something." In the command tent, Townsend immediately directed thermal imaging toward the southern approach. For several tense moments, nothing appeared on the screens. Then a technician called out, "Sir, I've got something." 3 heat signatures moving along the dry wash approximately 1 mile out. They're using some kind of thermal masking, but there's intermittent bleed-through. "That's them," Townsend confirmed grimly. "Alert all teams, but maintain positions." "Let's see what they're planning before we move." Robert joined Townsend at the monitoring station. "How did Baker know? Our sensors didn't pick them up until after her warning." "She didn't know," Townsend replied. "The bull did." Robert's weathered face registered amazement. "So her theories about Thunder's intelligence might have more merit than conventional science acknowledges," Townsend finished. "Which is exactly why the Viper Syndicate wants him, and why we can't let them have him." Back at her observation post, Olivia maintained communication with the command center while watching Thunder's behavior. The bull had risen to his feet, facing the direction of the approaching threat, but showing no sign of panic. His posture conveyed alertness rather than fear. "He's not running," Olivia reported quietly. "It's almost like he's waiting." "Waiting for what?" came Robert's voice over the radio. Before Olivia could respond, Thunder made his move, but not in the direction anyone anticipated. Rather than retreating from the approaching threat, he began walking purposefully toward the eastern rocks, where the observation post had been discovered earlier. "He's moving northeast," Olivia reported, scrambling to follow while maintaining a safe distance. "Heading toward the rock formations." In the command center, confusion reigned momentarily. Why would he move toward a more exposed position? Diana wondered aloud. Townsend studied the topographical map. Unless... His finger traced a route through the rocks. "There's a narrow passage here that connects to a box canyon. If he's headed there, It's a defensive position, Robert realized. Limited approaches, high walls, probably a water source given the vegetation patterns. He's leading us to a better tactical position, Townsend concluded, unable to keep the astonishment from his voice. Thunder continued his deliberate pace toward the rocks, occasionally looking back as if to ensure Olivia was following. James shadowed them both, maintaining his protective distance. The command center redirected resources to cover Thunder's new trajectory, rapidly adapting their defense plan. The Viper Syndicate team, meanwhile, had altered their approach to intercept Thunder's movement. Thermal imaging showed them splitting up, two continuing along their original path, while one circled to approach from the north. "They're trying to flank him," Townsend observed, "cut off his retreat to the rocks." "Should we intervene?" Robert asked. Townsend considered their options. "Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. Thunder seems to have a plan, and our interference might do more harm than good at this point." As Thunder approached the rock formation, the moonlight revealed what the maps had only suggested, a natural fortress of stone, with a narrow entrance leading to a sheltered interior space. The bull paused at the entrance, looking back at Olivia with what seemed like expectation. "I think he wants me to follow him in," she radioed. "Negative," came Townsend's immediate response. "Too dangerous. We don't know what's in there." "He does," Olivia countered, "and he's been right about everything so far." Without waiting for a response, she moved forward, following Thunder into the passage. James reported her action to the command center, his voice tight with concern. "Baker has entered the rock formation with the bull. Should I follow?" After a moment of tense silence, Townsend made his decision. "Maintain visual contact if possible, but don't enter unless necessary. We need you as our backup if things go wrong." Inside the rock formation, Olivia discovered what Thunder had apparently known all along: a hidden box canyon with steep walls, a small spring-fed pool, and most surprisingly, evidence of Thunder's previous visits. There were worn paths in the soil, areas where the grass had been grazed, even a sheltered spot under an overhanging rock where the ground had been pawed flat, a bed of sorts. "He's brought me to his safe place," Olivia reported, awe in her voice. "This is where he comes when threatened. There's water, some forage, and only one way in or out." Thunder moved to the pool, drinking deeply before raising his head to look at Olivia. In the moonlight filtering into the canyon, his silver-gray coat seemed almost luminous, his massive form both powerful and vulnerable. The radio crackled with Townsend's voice. "Baker, we've lost visual on you. The rock walls are interfering with thermal imaging." "Report status." "We're secure," she replied. "Thunder has brought us to what appears to be his personal sanctuary. It's defensible, with resources to withstand a siege if necessary." "The Viper team is approaching your position," Townsend informed her. "We're tracking all three operatives, but they're using sophisticated countermeasures. Be prepared for contact." Olivia felt a flutter of fear, but Thunder's calm presence steadied her. The bull seemed to sense her anxiety and moved closer, his massive body positioned between her and the canyon entrance. Outside, James had found a vantage point on the rocks above the entrance, giving him both cover and a clear view of anyone approaching. He reported movement approximately 200 yards out, a figure using the terrain for concealment, advancing cautiously toward the canyon entrance. In the command center, tension mounted as they tracked the Viper operatives converging on Thunder's position. Townsend deployed his tactical teams to intercept, but the rugged terrain slowed their approach. It would be minutes before they could reach Olivia and Thunder, minutes during which the Viper team would have a clear advantage. "Baker," Townsend's voice was urgent over the radio. "We have hostiles approaching your position. Find cover and stay down. Backup is en route." Inside the canyon, Olivia sought shelter behind a large boulder, keeping Thunder in sight. The bull remained near the entrance, seemingly alert but unafraid. His behavior continued to defy conventional understanding of how a wild animal should react in such circumstances. The first indication of the Viper team's arrival was a small object tossed into the canyon, a canister that began emitting a strange odor. Olivia recognized it immediately as a bovine sedative, aerosolized to incapacitate Thunder without risking a noisy tranquilizer dart. "They're using airborne sedatives," she reported urgently, attempting to drug Thunder. But once again, the bull's behavior defied expectations. Instead of succumbing to the sedative, he retreated deeper into the canyon, moving upwind of the chemical cloud. His actions displayed a level of tactical awareness that left Olivia stunned. Outside the canyon, James spotted one of the Viper operatives preparing to enter and took action. A well-placed tranquilizer dart found its mark, dropping the man silently, but the other two operatives were now aware of his position and returned fire, forcing James to take cover. "Contact at the canyon entrance," he reported tersely. "One hostile down, two still active, taking fire." The situation deteriorated rapidly. The remaining Viper operatives, realizing their covert approach had failed, switched to a more aggressive strategy. One maintained suppressing fire on James's position while the other prepared to enter the canyon, armed with what appeared to be a specialized capture system designed for large animals. Inside, Olivia found herself trapped between the approaching hostile and Thunder's position deeper in the canyon. The bull watched her intently, then did something remarkable. He pawed at the ground beside him in what appeared to be a clear invitation for her to join him in his more protected position. Without hesitation, Olivia made a dash across the open ground, reaching Thunder just as a figure appeared at the canyon entrance. The operative spotted them immediately and raised what looked like a modified tranquilizer rifle. What happened next would later be debated by everyone who reviewed the incident. Thunder, seeing the threat to Olivia, lowered his massive head and charged. The Viper operative fired, the dart striking Thunder's shoulder. But instead of slowing, the bull accelerated, covering the ground between them with astonishing speed. The operative attempted to retreat, but was too slow. 2,000 pounds of determined Brahman bull slammed into him, sending him flying backward out of the canyon entrance. The impact was not fatal. Thunder had appeared to pull his charge at the last moment, but it was certainly effective. The man lay stunned on the ground outside. Thunder staggered slightly, the tranquilizer beginning to take effect. He turned back toward Olivia, his movements becoming increasingly uncoordinated. With what seemed like enormous effort, he made his way back to where she stood, then gradually sank to his knees, fighting the sedative with every ounce of his formidable will. "Thunder's been hit with a tranquilizer," Olivia reported, her voice breaking as she rushed to the bull's side. "He's going down, but he saved me. He deliberately intercepted the operative who was targeting me." Outside, the FBI tactical team had finally arrived, securing the area and apprehending the remaining Viper operative. James descended from his position to join them, reporting what he had witnessed. "I've never seen anything like it," he told Townsend when the agent arrived on scene. "That bull knew exactly what he was doing. He protected Baker like she was one of his own." Inside the canyon, Olivia sat with Thunder as Scott rushed in to assess his condition. The veterinarian quickly identified the tranquilizer type from the dart and administered a partial reversal agent, enough to prevent respiratory depression without completely counteracting the sedative effect. "He'll be unconscious for several hours," Scott informed her, checking Thunder's vital signs. "But he should recover completely. These are powerful drugs, but his size works in his favor. The dose wasn't quite enough for an animal his weight." Olivia stroked Thunder's massive head as his eyes gradually closed, the tranquilizer finally overcoming his resistance. Tears streamed down her face, not just from fear or relief, but from a profound sense of connection with this remarkable animal who had demonstrated such extraordinary awareness and courage. "He knew," she whispered. "He understood everything that was happening. and he made choices. Conscious, deliberate choices. Scott, who had once been the most skeptical of Olivia's theories about animal intelligence, could only nod in silent agreement. The evidence before them defied conventional explanation. As dawn approached, Thunder lay peacefully sedated in his hidden sanctuary, surrounded by people committed to his protection. The Viper Syndicate operatives had been taken into custody, their sophisticated equipment confiscated. What should have been a triumph felt somehow hollow as the team contemplated the price of their success, Thunder's injury and the revelation of his extraordinary nature, which had made him a target in the first place. No one voiced the question that hung in the air. If Thunder possessed such remarkable intelligence and awareness, what did that mean for how humans understood and treated animals like him? And what other magnificent creatures might be out there, their cognitive gifts unrecognized by the very species that claimed dominion over them? The morning sun cast long shadows across the box canyon as Special Agent Townsend surveyed the aftermath of the night's confrontation. The three Viper Syndicate operatives sat handcuffed in separate vehicles, being transported to the FBI field office in Phoenix for interrogation. Their equipment, an impressive array of military-grade technology, had been catalogued and packed as evidence. Thunder still lay unconscious, his massive form rising and falling with deep, sedated breaths. Scott monitored his vital signs hourly, reassuring Olivia that the bull was recovering well from the tranquilizer. She had refused to leave his side, maintaining her vigil through the night, speaking softly to him even though he couldn't hear her. Robert approached Townsend as the agent finished a call with his superiors. "What happens now?" the veteran ranger asked, his weathered face showing the strain of the past 24 hours. "Now we follow the evidence," Townsend replied, gesturing toward the captured equipment. "These aren't just poachers, they're part of a sophisticated international operation. The tracking devices, the communications gear, the specialized tranquilizers. This goes beyond black market trafficking." "What do you mean?" Townsend hesitated, glancing toward Olivia and Thunder. "We've been tracking the Viper Syndicate for 18 months. They don't just target any valuable animals. They specifically go after specimens that demonstrate unusual intelligence or behavioral patterns. It's selective breeding on a global scale." Robert's expression darkened. "For what purpose?" "That's what we're trying to determine. But whatever they're doing, it involves creating private collections of genetically exceptional animals. The buyers pay millions for specimens like Thunder." Their conversation was interrupted when Diana Blackwood approached with a tablet displaying preliminary forensic results. "You need to see this," she told Townsend, her expression grave. "We've identified one of the operatives. Former Special Forces went off the grid 3 years ago. The concerning part is this." She pointed to a detail in the report. "He was previously assigned to a classified military project studying animal intelligence for potential tactical applications." Townsend's jaw tightened. "So there's a connection to government research." "Former government research," Diana corrected. "The project was officially terminated 5 years ago due to ethical concerns. But it seems some of the researchers continued their work privately." This revelation cast the events in an even more disturbing light. What had initially appeared to be an isolated poaching attempt now connected to larger questions about military research, ethical boundaries, and the exploitation of animal intelligence. Inside the canyon, Olivia continued her quiet vigil beside Thunder. The bull's breathing had become more regular, his massive body occasionally twitching as the sedative began to wear off. Scott had explained that the recovery would be gradual. Thunder would likely experience disorientation before fully regaining consciousness. "I'm right here," Olivia told him softly, stroking his silver-gray coat. "You're safe now." Lisa approached, carrying a container of water and some food for Olivia. "You should eat something," she insisted, setting the provisions nearby. It's been almost 24 hours. Olivia accepted the water but ignored the food. Have they determined what they wanted with him? Lisa hesitated, uncertain how much to share, but decided Olivia deserved the truth. It's bigger than we thought. These people, the Viper Syndicate, they're specifically targeting animals that demonstrate exceptional intelligence. Thunder wasn't a random target. They've been watching him for months, maybe longer. Because they recognized what I saw in him, Olivia concluded quietly. Yes, and that makes your research potentially very significant. Townsend wants to speak with you when you're ready. As if sensing he was being discussed, Thunder's eyelids fluttered. A low rumble emanated from his chest as consciousness began returning. Olivia immediately focused all her attention on him, speaking in soothing tones as his massive body tensed with confusion. "Easy, big guy," she murmured. "You're okay. You're safe." Scott hurried over, medical kit in hand, prepared to administer additional medication if Thunder became agitated during his emergence from sedation. But to everyone's surprise, the bull remained remarkably calm as awareness returned. His eyes, initially unfocused, gradually cleared as they found Olivia's face. "Remarkable," Scott whispered. "I've tranquilized dozens of large mammals. They usually come out of sedation disoriented and aggressive. He's completely lucid." Thunder slowly raised his massive head, looking first at Olivia, then scanning the canyon, seeming to assess the situation with an awareness that defied conventional understanding of bovine cognition. After apparently satisfying himself that the danger had passed, he exhaled deeply and lowered his head again, resting it near Olivia's knee in what looked strikingly like a gesture of trust. Word of Thunder's awakening quickly spread through the camp. Robert and Townsend arrived to witness his recovery, standing at a respectful distance to avoid causing stress. "I've never seen anything like it," Robert admitted, watching the interaction between Olivia and Thunder. "In 40 years of wildlife work, I've never seen an animal demonstrate this level of awareness." Townsend nodded thoughtfully. "Which is exactly why the Viper Syndicate targeted him, and why they'll try again if given the opportunity." As the morning progressed, Thunder gradually regained his strength. He eventually rose to his feet, somewhat unsteady at first but quickly recovering his balance. He moved to the small spring in the canyon, drinking deeply before returning to stand near Olivia. The team gathered to discuss their next steps. The immediate danger had passed, but the larger threat remained. The Viper Syndicate was clearly part of an extensive network, and the capture of 3 operatives wouldn't end their operations. "We need to decide what happens to Thunder now," Robert said, addressing the group. "The original plan was to return him to the wild once he recovered from the mud pit ordeal, but circumstances have changed. He can't go back to roaming freely," Townsend stated firmly. "He'd be too vulnerable." "The Syndicate obviously has extensive intelligence on his habits and territory. So what are you suggesting?" Olivia challenged, her protective instincts flaring. "That we lock him up in some facility? Put him in a zoo? That would be a death sentence for an animal like him." Thunder stood beside her, his intelligent eyes moving from speaker to speaker as if following the conversation. The bond between him and Olivia had deepened through their shared ordeal, creating a connection that transcended conventional human-animal relationships. "There's a third option," Scott suggested carefully. "The University of Arizona has a protected research range. 5,000 acres of natural habitat, completely secured and monitored. It's designed for studying endangered species in a setting that mimics their natural environment." "A gilded cage is still a cage," Olivia argued. "It's not ideal," Scott acknowledged, "but it would give him protection while allowing him significant freedom." "And?" He hesitated, looking at Townsend for permission to continue. The FBI agent nodded. "Go ahead." And it would allow us to better understand his cognitive abilities, Scott finished. To document and study what makes him so exceptional, that knowledge could help protect other animals like him. Thunder made a low rumbling sound, drawing everyone's attention. He had moved to the canyon entrance and stood looking out, his posture alert, but not fearful. He wants to see what's happening outside, Olivia interpreted, rising to join him. The group followed as Thunder led them out of the canyon into the morning sunlight. The scene that greeted them was one of ordered activity. FBI evidence technicians processing the site, rangers securing the perimeter, medical personnel treating James for a minor injury sustained during the firefight. Thunder surveyed it all with what appeared to be methodical interest, then turned his attention to the eastern horizon, where the sun illuminated the vast expanse of desert that had been his home. In that moment, Olivia realized something crucial about Thunder's nature. His intelligence was matched by an equally powerful desire for freedom. However exceptional his cognitive abilities might be, he was still a wild creature with an innate need for open spaces and self-determination. "There's another option we haven't considered," she said slowly, the beginnings of a plan forming in her mind. "What if we create a monitored zone within his natural territory? We already have the technology to track him remotely. We could establish a protected area that allows him to live naturally while keeping him under observation." Townsend looked skeptical. "The resources required would be substantial." "Less than you might think," Robert interjected, warming to Olivia's idea. "We already have satellite tracking for endangered species in this region. We could integrate Thunder into that system, establish ranger stations at key points in his territory." "And I could continue my research under field conditions," Olivia added. "Documenting his behavior in his natural environment would yield more authentic data than any controlled setting. It would also maintain his value as bait," Townsend pointed out bluntly. "The Viper Syndicate would continue to target him, which could help us identify and apprehend more of their network." Olivia bristled at the suggestion of using Thunder as bait, but before she could object, the bull himself seemed to express an opinion. He moved deliberately to stand between Olivia and Townsend, his massive frame creating a physical barrier, his eyes fixed on the FBI agent with unmistakable intelligence. The message was clear even to the most skeptical observer. Thunder understood the conversation's implications and had his own perspective to contribute. A stunned silence fell over the group. It was one thing to theorize about Thunder's intelligence in abstract terms, quite another to witness such a direct demonstration of his comprehension and agency. "Well," Robert finally said, his voice slightly unsteady, "I think we just got Thunder's vote on the matter." Townsend studied the bull with newfound respect. "Point taken," he acknowledged. Then to Olivia, "Develop a formal proposal for this monitored zone concept. If it's feasible from both security and scientific perspectives, I'll support it." As the discussion continued, elaborating the details of how such a protected zone might function, Thunder remained close to Olivia, occasionally nudging her gently as if offering encouragement. His behavior continued to challenge conventional understanding of animal cognition, suggesting levels of comprehension and emotional intelligence previously unrecognized in bovines. Later that day, as the forensics team completed their work and prepared to transport the evidence, Diana approached Townsend with another significant discovery. "We found something in the equipment recovered from the observation post," she reported, showing him a small device. "It's a specialized receiver designed to interact with the tracking chip they'd previously implanted in Thunder. But it's not just receiving location data, it's collecting physiological information." "What kind of physiological information?" Townsend asked. "Brain activity patterns, primarily. They were specifically monitoring his neurological responses to different stimuli." Diana's expression reflected her disturbing conclusion. "They weren't just tracking where he went, they were studying how he thinks." This revelation added yet another layer to the already complex situation. The Viper Syndicate's interest in Thunder went beyond his genetic value or physical capabilities. They were specifically interested in his cognitive processes. When Townsend shared this information with the core team, the implications landed heavily. Thunder wasn't just a valuable specimen, he represented something potentially revolutionary in our understanding of animal intelligence. "This changes everything," Scott said quietly. If they were monitoring his brain activity and still considered him valuable enough to attempt such a high-risk extraction, the data must have shown something extraordinary. "It validates what I've been observing all along," Olivia noted, absently stroking Thunder's neck as he stood beside her. "He's not just unusually smart for a bull. He's demonstrating a type of intelligence that challenges our entire framework for understanding animal cognition." Throughout this discussion, Thunder remained attentive, his ears flicking toward each speaker, his eyes revealing an awareness that seemed increasingly undeniable. When Olivia explained her proposed monitoring program, a protected zone within his natural territory where he could live freely while under observation, he maintained direct eye contact with her in a way that many present interpreted as understanding. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across the desert landscape, final preparations were made for Thunder's temporary relocation to a secure facility, while Olivia's proposal underwent formal review. The bull would spend several weeks under observation, receiving medical care and recovering from his ordeal before potentially returning to a protected section of his natural territory. Townsend pulled Olivia aside before departing. "The information we've gathered over the past 24 hours could fundamentally change how we understand certain animals," he told her. "Your research just became very important to national security interests." "My priority is Thunder's well-being," she replied firmly. "I won't allow him to be exploited by anyone." "Understood," Townsend nodded. "But consider this. Documenting and protecting his cognitive abilities might help us recognize and protect other animals with similar potential. This goes beyond one remarkable bull. It could reshape our entire relationship with the species we share this planet with." As Townsend walked away, Olivia turned to Thunder, who had been watching their exchange with his characteristic attentiveness. In his eyes, she saw not just intelligence, but something that looked remarkably like wisdom, a depth of understanding that transcended the artificial boundaries humans had constructed between themselves and other species. "We've been underestimating you all along, haven't we?" she murmured. "Not just you, but probably countless other animals. The question is, now that we're beginning to understand, what will we do with that knowledge?" Thunder's response was to gently rest his massive head against her shoulder in what felt like both reassurance and challenge, a gesture that seemed to say their journey together was just beginning, and that the true revelation lay not in what humans could learn about animals like him, but in what such animals could teach humans about themselves. 6 months later, Olivia Baker stood on a rocky outcropping overlooking the newly established Thunder Basin Protected Zone. The early morning sun bathed the landscape in golden light, highlighting the rich tapestry of desert vegetation that had flourished after the winter rains. In the distance, a familiar silver-gray figure grazed peacefully among a small herd of native cattle that had been introduced to the preserve. Thunder had thrived since his return to a modified version of his natural territory. The protected zone encompassed nearly 10,000 acres of his original range, now ringed with unobtrusive monitoring stations and regularly patrolled by rangers. The sophisticated security system, funded jointly by the University of Arizona and a special FBI conservation initiative, had so far prevented any further poaching attempts, though intelligence suggested the Viper Syndicate remained interested in the remarkable bull. Olivia raised her binoculars, focusing on Thunder as he moved with the quiet confidence that had always distinguished him. At 7.5 years old, he was in his prime, his powerful physique fully recovered from the ordeal that had brought them together. The small monitoring device attached to his ear was the only visible sign of human intervention in his otherwise natural existence. "Still watching your boy?" Robert Miller's voice came from behind her as the veteran ranger joined her at the observation point. His retirement had been postponed indefinitely after the events surrounding Thunder's rescue, his expertise too valuable to lose as they established the new preserve. "Every chance I get," Olivia admitted with a smile. "The data we're collecting is remarkable, but nothing compares to direct observation." Robert nodded in understanding. In the months since the dramatic confrontation with the Viper Syndicate, he had become one of Thunder's most devoted advocates. His initial skepticism about Olivia's theories regarding animal intelligence transformed into wholehearted support. "The university team arrived this morning," he informed her. "Dr. Samuels is setting up the cognitive assessment equipment at the North Station." Olivia nodded, gathering her notes. The collaborative research program studying Thunder's cognitive abilities had drawn interest from leading animal behaviorists across the country. Today marked the beginning of a new phase, controlled intelligence assessments conducted in Thunder's natural environment rather than a laboratory setting. "Has he shown any interest in the testing area?" she asked, knowing Thunder's uncanny ability to detect changes in his environment. "Checked it out thoroughly yesterday," Robert confirmed with a chuckle. "Spent almost an hour examining the equipment through the fence. That bull doesn't miss a thing." They made their way down from the observation point to the research station where Dr. Eleanor Samuels, a renowned expert in comparative psychology from Cornell University, was calibrating a series of problem-solving devices designed specifically for bovine subjects. "Olivia," Dr. Samuels greeted her warmly. "I can't wait to begin. The remote data you've been sending is extraordinary, but seeing Thunder's capabilities firsthand will be invaluable for our paper." The testing apparatus had been ingeniously designed to be minimally invasive to Thunder's natural routine. A series of puzzle feeders had been installed along one of his regular grazing routes, each presenting increasingly complex challenges that would reward success with mineral supplements he particularly enjoyed. "Remember," Olivia cautioned, "we're on his schedule. He may not engage with the puzzles immediately, or at all if he's not interested." "Of course," Dr. Samuels agreed. "That's the beauty of this approach. We're observing cognitive abilities expressed voluntarily in a natural setting, not coerced behaviors in a controlled environment." As they finalized preparations, Scott Harrison arrived with the latest veterinary reports. In the months since Thunder's rescue, Scott had become the bull's primary health provider, visiting the preserve weekly to monitor his condition and collect biological samples for ongoing research. "Blood work shows excellent health markers," Scott reported. "His stress hormones are within normal range, suggesting he's well adapted to the monitoring program." He handed Olivia a tablet displaying the detailed results. "But there's something else you should see. The neurotransmitter analysis is showing patterns I've never seen in bovines before. His brain chemistry is truly unique." This confirmed what their behavioral observations had suggested. Thunder's exceptional intelligence had physiological correlates that distinguished him from other cattle. The question that continued to fascinate researchers was whether these differences represented rare individual variation or potentially untapped cognitive potential present in the species more broadly. By mid-morning, the research team had completed their setup and withdrawn to the observation blind. Now it was a waiting game. Would Thunder choose to investigate the puzzles they'd prepared, and if so, how would he approach them? They didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, Thunder appeared at the edge of the testing area, his keen eyes surveying the new additions to his territory. The other cattle in his small herd remained at a distance, grazing contentedly, but Thunder's curiosity drew him forward. "He's approaching, Doctor." Samuels whispered unnecessarily, excitement evident in her voice. Look at that intentional assessment. He's not just responding to the novelty, he's evaluating the situation. Thunder circled the first puzzle feeder, a simple mechanism that required pushing a lever to release a mineral block. He examined it from multiple angles, his methodical approach more reminiscent of primate problem-solving than typical bovine behavior. He's thinking it through, Olivia explained. Watch his eyes. He's tracking the mechanism components, establishing cause and effect before he even attempts a solution. After several minutes of examination, Thunder deliberately pressed his head against the lever. When the mineral block dropped into the tray below, he showed no surprise, simply lowering his head to enjoy the reward he had expected to receive. "First try," Scott murmured. "No random attempts, no learning curve. He analyzed and solved." "Doctor." Samuels was rapidly taking notes, her expression a mixture of scientific excitement and awe. "This is unprecedented in bovine cognition testing. He's demonstrating causal reasoning typically associated with corvids and primates." Thunder proceeded through the increasingly complex puzzles with the same methodical approach, solving each one after careful observation. The final challenge, a multi-step problem requiring sequential actions in a specific order, gave him pause. He spent nearly 15 minutes studying the mechanism before attempting a solution, his concentration intense. "This is the real test," Dr. Samuels whispered. "This level of sequential reasoning is considered beyond bovine cognitive capacity in all the literature." When Thunder finally acted, it was with deliberate precision. He completed the sequence flawlessly, pushing one lever with his head, then using his hoof to press a floor plate, before finally pulling a rope with his mouth to release the mineral reward. And a stunned silence fell over the observation blind. "He just rewrote our understanding of bovine intelligence," Dr. Samuels finally said, her voice unsteady with the weight of scientific breakthrough. "This isn't just exceptional, it's revolutionary." For Olivia, Thunder's performance confirmed what she had known instinctively since their first encounter. His intelligence wasn't simply a matter of being smart for a bull. It represented a level of cognitive ability that challenged fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness. After enjoying his final reward, Thunder looked directly toward the observation blind, as if acknowledging the humans watching him. Then, with unhurried dignity, he rejoined his herd, resuming his normal grazing pattern as though the extraordinary demonstration of intelligence had been nothing unusual. Later that afternoon, as the research team reviewed their recordings and data, Special Agent Townsend arrived at the preserve for his monthly security assessment. The FBI had maintained close involvement with the Thunder Basin project, both to protect against further poaching attempts and to gather intelligence on the Viper Syndicate's operations. "The test results exceeded even our highest expectations," Olivia told him as they walked the perimeter of the preserve. Thunder demonstrated problem-solving abilities previously thought impossible for bovines. Townsend nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Which unfortunately confirms why the syndicate was so determined to acquire him. Our intelligence suggests they're developing a breeding program focusing on cognitive traits in various species." "Any progress identifying their leadership?" Olivia asked. "Some. The 3 operatives we captured led us to a mid-level cell operating out of Sonora. We've identified financial connections to legitimate breeding operations in 4 countries. Townsend paused, considering how much to share. "There's something else. The neurological monitoring equipment we recovered. It matches technology developed in a classified research program studying animal intelligence for potential military applications. The program Diana mentioned that was supposedly shut down years ago," Olivia recalled. "Exactly. We now believe some of the researchers continued their work privately, eventually connecting with wildlife trafficking networks to access specimens they couldn't obtain legally. This disturbing connection between military research, wildlife trafficking, and Thunder's exceptional abilities added yet another layer of complexity to an already unprecedented situation. What had begun as a seemingly straightforward wildlife rescue had evolved into something with profound implications for science, ethics, and national security. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Olivia found a quiet moment alone with Thunder. He had approached the fence line separating the research station from the preserve, seemingly seeking her out as he often did when she visited. "You did well today," she told him softly, reaching through the fence to stroke his massive forehead. "Though I suspect you found those puzzles rather simple." Thunder rumbled softly in response, his intelligent eyes fixed on hers with what felt unmistakably like communication. After all they had been through together, Olivia had stopped questioning the depth of understanding that passed between them. Whatever science might eventually conclude about bovine cognition, her own experience had convinced her that Thunder's awareness approached and perhaps in some ways exceeded what humans conventionally recognized as consciousness. "The research team wants to implement more advanced testing next month," she continued, knowing he comprehended far more than anyone except perhaps herself believed possible. "They're designing challenges that would be difficult even for primates. I told them you'd probably surprise them again." Thunder made a soft sound, pressing his head gently against her hand in what had become their familiar gesture of connection. In that moment of quiet communion, Olivia reflected on how profoundly her life had changed since that dramatic day when a bull trapped in mud and surrounded by spiders had upended her understanding of animal intelligence. The academic papers resulting from Thunder's case had already begun transforming scientific perspectives on bovine cognition. More importantly, the revelations about his abilities had sparked renewed ethical debates about human relationships with other species. If animals like Thunder possessed levels of awareness and intelligence approaching human-like consciousness, what responsibilities did that create for how they were treated? As darkness began to fall across the desert landscape, Thunder reluctantly moved away from the fence line, returning to his herd for the night. Olivia watched him go, his silver-gray form gradually disappearing into the gathering shadows. Tomorrow would bring new researchers, new tests, new questions about the remarkable being who had changed her life and challenged fundamental assumptions about the boundaries between human and animal consciousness. The Thunder Basin Protected Zone had been established to safeguard one exceptional bull, but its significance now extended far beyond a single animal. It had become a place where human understanding of other species was being profoundly reconsidered, where the line between human and animal intelligence was revealed to be far more blurred than science had previously acknowledged. For Grace and Harold Mitchell, the elderly hikers whose chance discovery had initiated this extraordinary journey, the preserve had become a regular destination. They visited monthly, always bringing carrots, Thunder's favorite treat, and marveling at how their simple act of compassion had blossomed into something so significant. "We just did what anyone would do," Harold often said when interviewed about their role. "We saw a creature in distress and called for help. Who could have imagined where it would lead?" Indeed, no one could have predicted that a bull trapped in mud, a swarm of protective spiders, and a team of dedicated rangers would combine to challenge humanity's understanding of animal intelligence so fundamentally. As Thunder thrived in his protected territory, the ripples of his remarkable story continued to spread outward, touching science, ethics, conservation, and the human relationship with the natural world. For Olivia Baker, watching the sunset from the observation point that had become her favorite thinking spot, the journey with Thunder represented both an ending and a beginning. The dramatic rescue that had brought them together had concluded, but the exploration of his extraordinary mind and its implications for our understanding of animal consciousness had only just begun. In the fading light, Thunder raised his head from grazing, looking directly toward her distant figure as if aware of her thoughts. The connection between them transcended conventional understanding, suggesting possibilities that science was only beginning to consider, that the boundaries between human and animal consciousness might be far more permeable than previously imagined, and that beings like Thunder might have much to teach humanity about intelligence, awareness, and the true nature of the minds that share our planet. Thunder's remarkable journey reminds us that even in our golden years, we can witness miracles that change how we see the world. Like Grace and Harold Mitchell, whose simple act of compassion during their daily hike led to an extraordinary discovery, we too can find purpose and meaning when we remain open to the wonders around us. Their story shows that retirement doesn't mean the end of making a difference. It can mean the beginning of our most important contributions. Thunder's intelligence and the bond he formed with Olivia echo the deep connections many of us have experienced with animals throughout our lives, connections that science is only now beginning to understand. In our wisdom years, when we have the time to truly observe and appreciate the natural world, we may discover, as Robert did after 40 years of rangering, that there's always something new to learn. Something that challenges our assumptions and opens our hearts. Have you ever experienced a special connection with an animal that seemed to understand you on a deeper level? Or like Grace and Harold, has a simple act of kindness ever led to something much larger than you could have imagined? Please share your stories in the comments below. Your wisdom and experiences matter to this community.